Okay, Peter, you're all set.
Right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back, Jen. And Land Bank, what is your name?
Liz.
Liz. Okay,
Liz Phelps.
Liz what?
Liz Phelps.
Liz Phelps. Okay.
Sorry, I don't know why my name is not appearing. It's Nantucket Land Bank.
You can change it if you want.
Peter, Liz is the replacement for Rachel for the CRAC representative.
Yep, I know. I just didn't know her name. Okay, so all right. Good morning, everybody. Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee, Tuesday, September 9th, 2025 at 10 a.m. We're going to do a call to order. I'm just going to call people's names, starting with people on the committee. Joanna Roach.
Here.
Hillary Hedges Rayport.
Here.
Gary Beller.
Here.
Liz Phelps.
Here.
Jen Carberg. Okay. Doug Rose.
Yeah.
Matt Fee.
Here.
And of course I'm here. Okay, and then staff, Leah Hill.
Here.
And Vince Murphy.
Here.
Okay, I'm going to read my little script. Good morning. This meeting is being audio and video recorded. Please be aware that other people may be able to see you, and take care not to share your device's screen. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Please silence all devices and phones. For items with public comment, after committee members have finished their discussion on an agenda item, the chair will afford members of the public up to 3 minutes to speak. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and any affiliations. To give public comment, you must be recognized by the chair and speak through the chair. There's to be no crosstalk with others in attendance. So, to be recognized for making a public comment, use the raised hand feature by clicking on the reaction tab at the bottom of your Zoom screen and then click on the raised hand button. When you've finished your comment, please click the lower hand button. It's important for me to note that CRAC isn't required by law to take public comment. We do so because we need your invaluable input. We view public comment as a privilege, so please remain respectful in your comments and do not disparage other speakers or the members of this committee. All right. Is there any public comment on subjects not on this agenda? I guess that's you, RJ. Okay. We have no minutes to approve, so we'll go right to Vince Murphy, a presentation on Baxter Road Alternative Access. Vince is the Town of Nantucket Sustainability Programs Manager. Go, Vince.
Thank you, Peter. I'm just going to share my screen and put this in presentation mode, and let me know when you can see it in presentation mode.
I think what we have is, all right. Yep, we got it.
Super. All right, thank you very kindly. It is a joy to be back to the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee. I haven't seen many of you in a long time. I know there's some new members here. Welcome to the new members. Great to see you all participating. We have a number of interesting projects in the Baxter Road area, and the one I'm here to talk about today, the one on the agenda, is the Baxter Road Alternative Access Project. We've been working on this for a little over 3.5 years. It's been going on a while. Just for a very quick bit of history and background, essentially the first little bit more than a year was just dedicated to routing. Then we worked, once we had a route to work with, we then went through 60% design, 90% design, 100% design, had to take input from a golf club, and then had to redo the 100% design, which we now have finally concluded. And I'm very, very pleased to say most of the neighbours support it, and we have developed it into a notice of intent, which has been submitted to the Conservation Commission. The Commission are going to start the public hearing on this on September 18th. I'm here to present it just in terms of resilience today. So I just do want to kind of go over, I'm not here to talk about geotubes. I know people love to talk about geotubes, but that's not the purpose of this. The purpose of this is to just look at the resilience aspects for the Resilience Advisory Committee for this alternative access project. I don't want to cause issues discussing wetland issues for the Conservation Commission representative, and I don't want to get into cultural heritage issues because I don't want to cause issues if we have to go to HDC. I just want to be upfront about it. We are just here to discuss the project resilience issues today. I hope that makes sense. So where we are at the moment is we have submitted the notice of intent to the Nantucket Conservation Commission, and that means it also went to Mass DEP. We submitted it to Natural Heritage the same day, and the CONCOM hearings begin on the 18th. And the piece on the other side of the screen that you can see with the title under the Arcadis name brand is the front page of the notice of intent application that got submitted on the 26th for the alternative access and utility relocation for continuity of service for Baxter Road residents. So this is north of Baybury for the most part, and just so that everyone knows, it's relocation for access, but also for critical services such as town water and town sewer. And then we can also license the use of those trackways for telecommunications, for internet, phone lines, whatever else is needed, electrical services as needed. So we can retreat all services into the same corridors. So let's just look at some of the surveys we had to do to make sure we had all the background done. Obviously, because this is an application to the Conservation Commission, we've done wetland delineations. We've undertaken stormwater reports to understand how we can do correct drainage on the trackways and any tarred surfaces in the new access ways. Clearly had to check for rare species. We've done pretty interesting soil surveys. The soil surveys in their own right were very interesting to go down to see how the various soil layers go down, and then once you get into glacial till and various clay layers to understand how the hydrology works for the area, that was very useful. We had a marvelous set of archaeological surveys undertaken. There was some pretty interesting things found, all in the test pits. We did test pits. I think there was it every 6 feet or 10 feet, whatever the requirement from the state was, I don't remember the exact number, through the corridors that we were planning. I'll show you the map for the corridors in a minute. And there was a couple of what you might call spoil heap type finds, like pottery shards, mostly associated with the lighthouse. And one of the most interesting was an arrow point, they said, that was 4,000 to 6,000 years old. It was found about 2 feet down at the bottom of one of the test pits before they found natural. And they said it was from a hunting event. And we've since found a way to donate that to the Wampanoag tribe. We've also done alternative assessments just to make sure that this retreat and relocation does make sense. We had to do what's called a swept analysis to make sure that in the event of a fire, that the largest fire unit that our fire department has can go down any of these trackways, turn and drive back out as needed. For any construction, post-construction vegetation planting to redo the sides of the roads and any disturbed areas, we've done a cost study. I'll get back to that one in a minute. It's a big number. We're looking at a time construction of 2 years, and post-construction, we've also done a maintenance schedule so that we can have an operation and maintenance phase post-construction so that everything's being looked at. To look at the risk in this area, the black lines are the proposed trackways. And then you might be quite familiar with this type of mapping. This is the erosion risk model that was undertaken by NOAA and that the town received in 2020. This is pretty interesting. Please understand that this model works for the high sea level rise scenario, and it assumes no coastal bank protections. We know there are some in place in this area, but this model specifically assumes there aren't any. So in the absence of any coastal bank protection, this is the type of erosion that we might see under a high sea level rise scenario out to 2100, where even part of Sankaty Road is breached. So we have a pretty interesting risk area here. Part of this is based on the bank composition, the bank angle of repose, and historic erosion rates in the area. So the northern part of Baxter Road already has the higher erosion rate. Just if I might put it here, this is Baybury Lane right here. just to orientate people. And the lighthouse would be, it's probably off my screen, it's north of my pointer right here. So there's a huge risk in this area, and that's the risk we're responding to. This is just planning if we do need to retreat the road. And these black corridors are the same corridors that the sewer and water services will go down, and I have more information on that in the next few slides.
Vince,
Yes, Peter.
Isn't Codfish Park a little far north from where it actually is?
I can't account for anomalies in Google Maps. It is a Google Maps background.
Okay.
If you go onto
Right.
Google Maps, that's exactly the same. Yeah.
Just checking.
I've wanted to try and fix it. It does cause issues, but somebody tagged it there a very long time ago, and there's a whole set of forms you got to fill out, and then Google rejects you the first few times you try to do it. I keep going if you want, but this has been one of my problems. You're right, Peter. It is mismarked, but it wasn't done by the consulting firm. This is a Google Maps issue.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you. So this is the engineering design for it. There's a couple of important things I'd like to point out in this that I want people to be aware of from a resilience point of view. The blue line is the edge of the coastal bank. The red line is just 100 feet setback from that, and that's only relevant to the notice of intent application for the Conservation Commission. You don't need to pay attention to that today. We've had to do a pretty interesting set of designs. I'm going to show you another more colorful version of this, an older version that's incorrect, but it just helps for public presentation. But I'd just like to point out ahead of time that this switchback system for a walking trail to get up to the lighthouse property is different from the next design, the older design, the incorrect design. The car park is much closer to Sankaty Road, and the setback into this property parcel corner here on the lighthouse property is different from the next one. They're the main differences. And I'm happy to go back to this particular one as many times as needed, but just for presentation purposes, this is just easier to look at. This is from the 60% design, and this is about 2 years old at this point. It's a very similar layout. There are the differences that I pointed out, that this is just a straight trackway. This is more, this isn't as into the corner as the correct design, and the car park is in the wrong position. This yellow line here is also gone from the 100% design, but just in terms of for public presentation, it's very much the same. There's mostly similarities. So the idea being that the existing services tie back into Baxter Road at the corner of Baybury. The water and sewer lines are going to follow down this way and go into the bike path and catch up to all to the existing access points here for this trackway here, this trackway here, and this main trackway here. I'd also like to point out, in terms of design, you might see purple trackways and brown trackways. The difference there is very simple. Purple is a tarred surface, paved surface, and the brown is unconsolidated. It'll be like we're calling it gravel, but that's a proper term. There'll be sand tracks effectively, just so people can understand it. These are unpaved surfaces here, and they, as far as we possibly can, tie back into existing infrastructure, and it gets egress, water and sewer service for every property from 90 Baxter Road north. I've had to add in buildings on the other side of the road. These are only rectangles representing where the buildings are. These are not footprints, but it shows that the properties at 95 and 97, these two up here, can come down the trackway here between 100 and 104 to get an exit out here. The three buildings on the other side of the road here, 109, 111, and 117, will all use an exit between 110 and 112, so that we've considered all of these. Then for the services for the ones on the ocean side of the road, they're just going to tie into the services here between 110 and 114, and the same between 110 and 112, so that they'll have continuity of service as well. So we're looking at both sides of the road here, just so that everyone is fully aware. Then for access to the lighthouse. The car park, as I've correctly shown, is much further to Sankaty Road, more like this area here, to get agreement from the golf club, because they will retain ownership of this property. And the way that it'll work is there'll be, I think, 6 parking spaces, about the same as what's at the end of Baxter Road right now, with 1 dedicated disability parking spot, should people wish to use it. We also, then people can walk from here up the trackway. The trackway changes from paved to unpaved, and then after 120 Baxter Road, it goes down to a walking track. So just to go back to the correct map, this area here goes down to, I think, a 4-foot walking track to go up this switchback to get the right gradients for ADA access so that people can walk up it. But this isn't the only, this might still be challenging. So we also have another agreement with the golf club that from the car park, there's going to be a barrier, so that people can't drive up there and try and get as close as they want all the time. If you go to the front reception desk of the golf club, they'll give you like a key fob or whatever system they choose to use. And then if you have a state level blue disability badge and can show it to them, they'll give you the pass, and then you can drive to the existing car park to get much closer. So we're trying to look out for ADA access here as much as everything else. The risks we're responding to here are 2 potential breach points at 85 and 105 Baxter Road. We don't know which might go first. I'm not going to try and play that game, but we're responding to both. Should the risk of breach happen here or here, these designs respond to access for all of these properties mapped here. So I just want to catch one more thing before we move on. Sorry, in the next part, we're still working through elements of this project. So we've worked through a design. We're now starting to achieve the permits that we're going to need to move this along. And that's where we are here. These are the other project elements that are still in development. Other parts, I'm not going to even begin to start to discuss today. There's too many variables, such as when we start to talk about the triggers for construction. I mentioned what the construction costs are. It's currently estimated by Arcadis to be $24.1 million. That is a very substantial price tag for these properties. The next question that follows on from this is a tricky one. There's no question about it. Would this get funded at town meeting? For these properties, there's about 22 houses and some more parcels beyond that number. So it's a large amount of money. People want to break it down. And how's that going to work? Well, we need all our permits before we can start to fully understand how the takings and damages are going to work. You have to remember that when we go to permitting agencies, they might not like part of it. They might want tweaks. They might want changes. So we can't work to finalize the damages and takings until we know the full impact of what our permits and any restrictions might be. Then once we come up with the final costs to get moved from a construction estimate to a final cost, we need to get that money from town meeting, and that has to be publicly funded. You need to have all of the construction funding and the project completed and signed off before you can then do the next phase, which is to recoup most of the cost of the project through betterments. And that is the plan here, that those who benefit from this project ultimately repay the costs of keeping access, sewer and water services for their house. They repay that to the town. There's a few different ways betterments can be paid. You can, if you have the ability, do a lump sum payment. If you don't, and you choose a payment type plan, you can pay over the course of 20 years. And that effectively ends up going with your annual property tax bill. Or if you choose not to pay, which is also an option, the next time the property goes to change hands, there'll be a lien put on the house, and then the next time the property goes to change hands, the town will reclaim the benefit betterments at that point. So there's some options for people potentially. We would obviously like to have this money repaid to the public purse as soon as possible. We also need to understand the town's portion of this. So we don't have that yet. So there is a benefit to the town in keeping these water, sewer, and accesses open. So we need to understand, is the town responsible for 10%? Is the town responsible for 25%? We're still in the process of working that out, and we need to understand all of the impacts of our permits first. That's why we're at the permitting phase, so that we can work through these other issues post-permitting issuance. So, big set of questions remain to be answered in this very elongated process. I just want to talk about one more thing. This has been a long process, and we have two different projects going on in this area. There's the GeoTube project, and there's this alternative access project that we're talking about here today. In either event, should the road fail before either project is ready, or in case one or other of these projects does get constructed and moves ahead, but hits that 200-year or 500-year storm that destroys it, we still need a backup plan. Good resilience planning is having a plan and a backup plan. And there are two plans in this area, but I still have a backup plan for both. And that is the Baxter Road Emergency Readiness Plan that we finalized in, I think it was earlier this year, January 24. I'm almost confusing my years now at this point. Oh, look, it's written on it. Isn't that convenient? January 24, we finalized the Baxter Road Emergency Readiness Plan. This is a very short-term emergency plan to keep walking access and the bare essentials of water and potentially sewer facilities for the properties, so that they wouldn't be condemned by the Board of Health or have their certificates of occupancy revoked, so that we have an ability to maintain this community in this area. So this is high-level planning to make sure that we have a plan, a secondary plan, and a backup plan for both. Hope that makes sense. And I'm happy to, this has been on the town website for quite some time. Happy to provide a link for the emergency readiness plan if the committee would like to see it. Essentially, it's not the best plan, but it's kind of very basic. How do we do the very minimum things? It might require parking on, say, the bike path or the grass verge of Sankaty Road, and walking access to private properties, and maybe connecting to fire hydrant with pipe hoses along the ground to get water to buildings. Again, not a perfect plan, because this has its own limitations, that if this event were to happen in freezing conditions, that pipe along the ground wouldn't be the best solution. So we're looking at it as an emergency plan, is the point, where we can't guarantee every service, but we have a plan to try and supply service to the best of our abilities. I realize there's a lot in this, and I realize this committee will have lots of questions, and I'm happy to answer any. All
right, thanks, Vince. Go ahead, Gary.
Thank you. Thanks, Vince, for the presentation. So when I see what you have presented, and I'd like you to go back to the slide, the next to last slide, that shows where, keep going one more back. Yeah, that's the one. It seems to me that since this program is moving ahead now, a lot of people are going to be looking at this as a model that might have to be replicated on other parts of the island when we have to take action and expenses are starting to accumulate. So my questions are, at one point, the town meeting is going to have to agree to fund this. So now we're talking about $24 million for 22 homes. And my question is, once again, as I say, people will be thinking about this for other projects around the island. At the time that the town meeting is going to be voting on this, would the voters have any comfort that the other costs of the betterments will be approved? Is that a separate, complete town meeting decision, or how do the two approvals time-wise get made? Would the people on going to the town meeting for the first time to see whether we should spend 24 million for 22 homes, would they be comfortable that the betterments will absorb a substantial portion of this $24 million? That's my question.
Marvelous question. So yes, we're looking at that, and the simple answer is, once say the money gets approved, I'm making it up now, I really am. If the 24 million gets approved in May of 2026 at town meeting, I don't even know if it's on the agenda. I'm just making up a scenario, and
Right.
then we can start construction and make it up again in July of 26, because that's when the funding would become available. Reality is it'll take a lot longer than that. That gives then 2 years to complete the construction, and then after that, that's when you get to impose the betterments. So you have to have the project fully completed before you can. So we have that 2 years to fully prepare for another town meeting where we get to put forward the betterments. But you're not wrong, Gary. It's an extremely difficult question to answer. And if we look at something like the Monomoy sewer scheme,
People
that was
go
something.
to the town meeting and feel comfortable approving $24 million for 22 homes when they have no idea whether or not the local community will accept the betterments, or whether the town meeting will approve the betterments 2 or 3 years out.
Yeah, you're right. And that's a big question, but that's the town getting money back. So it's hard to see how voters would turn down getting money back. So, but you're not wrong. It's still a risk. It still has to get voted on. It still has to get approved. But we do have the 2 years from the start of construction to the end of construction to work that out. But yes, it is a tricky situation. And I'm not saying it's perfect, but we're also going to face this for other projects around the island, like you also correctly point out. But looking at the Monomoy sewer scheme, when that was done, I think there was something like 90% of the cost of that project was charged back to the beneficiaries in that area and betterments. So we're looking to that as a model.
And would the town people, would the vote for the betterments go through the regular annual town meeting, and the people in the community who pay for it, they will have no veto power over that?
It's a great question. I think that one might be a little bit above my pay grade. I don't know how to answer that, Gary. It's a good question. I just don't know how to answer it.
Well, because I'm thinking now of all the other projects we're going to talk about. So if somebody wants to do something in Mattocket or Brant Point, they say, okay, we'll do this, and we'll get the town to approve spending another 20 or 30 million dollars. And a few years from now, they can come back to us and we'll see whether or not we're going to approve the betterments. That's going to be a tough, sled to push.
You're not wrong, but again, you're voting to reclaim money. So that's not the biggest
Wow.
meeting.
Wow.
I appreciate it's a tricky question. And again, when voters have already turned down major projects that benefit our elderly or other services around town, it's again, would town meeting approve this? I don't know. It's a tricky situation. Sorry, I can't hear.
That's all right. We're all being quiet. Gary, can I move on? Can I move on to Joanna?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, Joanna.
Thanks. I'm kind of you answered some of my questions with regard to the timeline. So you're thinking that this would come in May, and
No
then
idea. No, sorry, that was a makey-uppy scenario. I have no idea when this
would come.
Yeah.
But I think that, Vince, you're also like, this would have to go before the capital committee and get put in the line of all the other capital projects. So I think we're ahead of ourselves in terms of like where this stands, and Christy can probably address this better than I, but it's not an automatic thing. It has to get ranked in there, and it has to get weighed, and the capital committee has to support it before it even goes to the finance committee, before it even goes to the town meeting.
That's
So,
true. What I'm at the moment is we're just at the application phase to know if we can even construct it. That's what I'm talking about today. So
Yeah.
we're getting very hung up on finance. I want to talk about the resilience of it, not the financing of this.
Yep.
They're a very valid question, but I don't even know if I have the right to, if the town has the right to construct it yet. So the purpose of the discussion here today is to look at the resilience elements of this. I thought we might get sidetracked with geotubes, but fine, we're getting sidetracked with finance. I want to know what the community thinks of this in terms of resilience planning for how it's working in the environment.
I got you. I totally got you. I do have one other question about that. Are there any other locations in coastal America where projects like this have been executed? And do you have examples of them?
You know what the funny part is? There's a lot of them that are in the same kind of how should I put this nicely? Talking shop circle where they get talked about, they get debated, and then the advancing of them gets tricky. My one to talk about most, and I got to visit it recently actually, is Surf Drive in Falmouth. They've been looking at how they're going to answer that issue there for 2 decades at this point, and they are in the same feedback loop where
Okay.
they're having trouble resolving it because they also have a different issue on Surf Drive where, yes, they want to keep their iconic coastal road open and they have homes between the road and the coastal environment and the water. And how do they resolve that and how do they stop the road flooding? But you can come down from another area to access from the other side. So there's only a few homes that are really at risk, and it's not about the homes, it's about the road. We keep looking at things as though this should be our road. We're looking at that. Is one of these our homes? How would I feel if this were my home? But in reality, from the town's side of things, we're trying to preserve homes, true, yes, but we're also most interested in preserving the access, which is a legal requirement, as well as the sewer and water services. So we're trying to look at it from resilience point of view, not in terms of home preservation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But the question really is there a successful project like this anywhere else?
Not one I can say off the top of my head. All I'm used to is how to advance ones from the talking shop stage to the construction stage. That's what I'm used to be perfectly honest, Joanna.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Vince. Thanks, Joanna. Hillary?
Yeah, thank you. So Vince, I'm sorry, I might get sidetracked a little bit, but I get asked about this stuff and I want to have thorough answers for people when they ask me. So, of the 22 houses, do you happen to know what the total property tax income to the town is?
So we're looking at that at the moment. It's in preparation. I don't have that yet.
Okay. Because that gets brought up all the time in conversation. Well, if you don't save the houses, you'll lose the property tax, and it would just be useful to know. Is there any way or discussion about before, obviously if we do this, we've done a tremendous amount of work and we want it to be successful at town meeting. Is there any way to secure like an agreement or an intention or even a bond that will allow us to demonstrate to town meeting that the owners have accepted the betterment, the liability of the betterment?
Where I stand at the moment is we're doing the notice of intent application, and to do a notice of intent application, you need property owner agreement, and this is only this isn't for construction. This is only to submit for notice of intent. I'm sorry, I'm really struggling to just explain. We're at a planning phase. We're not anywhere near a construction phase. We need all of the planning in place first. But the point being, we got vast majority of the homeowners to sign and send in a consent to submit the various planning documents, the planning submissions for say Mass DEP, Concom, for the natural heritage, all of those. We got those agreements. So people are agreeing thus far. But a fact is a fact. There's a very small number, 1 or 2 property owners who are opposed to the project. And one of those recently changed his mind. He'd been a participant and a supporter up until earlier this year, and then changed his mind and said he didn't want to support it anymore. But that's a property owner's right, and he can do as he pleases. So for the most part, the engagement has been extraordinarily thorough. When we initially started this project and we're looking at the routing, sorry to dredge up bad memories for Matt, but we thought it would take about 3 months. It took about a year and 3 months, and then it had to go to select board. Select board ultimately were the ones that had to choose the routing design because there was it wasn't quite a 50-50 split. It was like a 45-55 split between the percent split between the neighbors. There was a weak preference for one route, not a strong preference. So, but now everyone's come to accept the select board's decision. We have moved through from routing selection through 60%, 90% design, and then 2 versions of 100% design to get something that's acceptable to everyone. And every property owner along the way asked for tweaks, and we gave them as much as we possibly could to get their buy-in so that they could get what they needed from the project to have their sewer lines routed to a particular part of their house so that they wouldn't have to reconfigure part of their house. You know, we were trying to be as sensitive as possible. The golf club had a look at this too at the 100% design stage, realized that they wanted to make a tweak, and we accommodated them, even though we'd already passed 100% design. We were as accommodating as we could possibly be to try and get the route selection and the to the final 100% design, and now through the permitting phases. So we have vast majority support, but not 100% support.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, I think we'll have, obviously we don't want to do all this work and then have it not pass a town meeting. And I think we're going to have a lot more success if we can show some evidence that we are going to recoup this money through betterments. And that will come not just with, you know, people saying, yeah, we want you to put in these services and we agree to the project, but also we're going to agree, like we understand what our liability is going to be. And so I hope that before it goes to town meeting, we're going to be able to say people have been apprised of their betterment and they are willing to pay for this. And to that, my last question is, so we have the example of Monomoy. You said that 90% of the cost of putting the sewer in was returned through betterments. How many people paid their betterment by accepting a lien on their house versus paying the cash, either upfront or over time?
I might have misspoken. That's not a real option. You don't really want to get into that, because by the time you do that and you get into the fees and, you know, the mispayments and that kind of stuff, it gets really negative.
Okay, well, I'm glad you said that, because what I wrote down was you can pay lump sum, you can pay over 20 years, or you can choose not to pay and accept a lien on your house. But you're saying that's a fraud worst case. Yeah, that's not like on the menu.
Yeah, the interest payments get bad.
I see. So you make it really unattractive. Because we do have situations on Nantucket where people with land on the coast, they figure, oh, you know, I'm just going to let this house go. I'm going to enjoy it for a little while, and then it's going to wash away to the waves. So when you have a betterment secured over 20 years in rapidly eroding area, you could find the house being just upside down and someone would just abandon it. And then the town would still be stuck with the loan repayments.
So there's an interesting point in this. For most of the property owners, what we're trying to propose is that they accept give an easement to the town so we don't have to do an adverse taking. That makes it much cheaper all around. For the small number of participants who don't want this on their property, and we end up in a scenario that we end up doing a taking, that makes everything more expensive. So the willing participation and having as many people as possible give easements, preferably all of the property owners giving easements, then it makes it cheaper for the town. We don't know what the final number is going to be yet, so we can't work out what the final benefit to each property is. And plus, you have to look at the distance down each trackway, so that if you're further down a trackway and you have to have services go all the way to your house, you're going to have to pay a little bit more than a person who's closer to the source point, say on Sankaty Road, for the sake of argument. So that, you know, there's going to have to be prorated parts to this as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
We
you.
got three more people that have to say something, and then we got public comment if that happens. So I'm going to move on to Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Yeah, I think Gary has it right. That this is a chance. This is going to be looked at as setting precedent, and how are we doing it? So it is important that we do this properly. One of the issues that we are going to have other agreements, MOUs, etc. I think, we won't necessarily have that in other cases, but in this one, the town will. A lot of the questions that you asked about how are we going to make sure they pay, I lump that in a hold harmless. I call it a hold harmless. We have to make sure that how this is written, the town is protected. And I think the couple points that came up at the end with Hillary are exactly right. If people are either choose not to pay at all and put a lien, or they know they only have 5 years and they take a 20-year deal, then the town will not get paid. And so one of the things that should be in the MOU when we discuss sort of expansion or anything else is the fact that the town will get paid no matter what. And I think, because if we don't, you can be assured that a lot of the people won't pay. And that will set a really bad precedent, and we'll have trouble in other areas. If the precedent is set that, so that's one thing. We also talked about timing of this and how it might not get paid later, etc. And that's the town meeting should vote it. If they have confidence that it will be paid, and we've got MOUs and agreements and things, that the town should vote for it. But if it at a later point, the 2 years later, it doesn't get funded, or the neighbors are revolted and don't want to do it, then the town, then the town meeting vote will be negative, and the select board should not be going forward with it, and that's a political question. I've seen situations, we were promised on Monomoy that we would better certain parts of it, and some of it didn't get bettered, even though it was promised at town meeting to be bettered, because the select board at the time voted 3-2 not to better it, and they put it all on the sewer payers. So so I think there are issues like that can crop up. I have a feeling in this case, the neighbors have agreed to pay for it. There's sort of they want something from the town, which is the use of the land to protect their properties longer. There's negotiations that have been happening and should happen. There should be a hold harmless in place, and it should set a good precedent for other areas. I can't imagine why, if we go to town meeting, people would be arguing not to do this. The town is required to provide services. So we are going to have to do this one way or the other. And so, I don't know why the town people would vote against it. Anyway, so that's all I've got. Thanks.
Can I respond to that very briefly?
Just, Vincent, it's 10:43. We have 2 other agenda items, and there are 2 more people that want to speak, and I have questions. So try and keep it brief.
Thank you. Matt is right. There's a real risk that this fails at town meeting. There's also a risk that the GeoTube project fails at town meeting. And then we only have one backup plan, which is the emergency plan. And if we end up in that scenario, we're going to get sued, which is partly where Matt was going with his comment, that we need to provide those services. It's a legal requirement that we have to provide water and sewer and access if you already have it, and that this plan answers that legal requirement. If it gets voted down at town meeting, we're inviting lawsuits.
Thanks, Vince. Go ahead, Liz.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks for that presentation, Vince. I just have a quick basic question. If you could go back to the coastal erosion hazard map, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding. So that in the absence of any protection of the bank, that's basically, we could lose that much bank by those years that are shown in the legend.
And this is based on the high sea level rise scenario. There's a few other versions of this that go right down to the low level sea level rise scenario. But as we've said at this committee so many times over the years, prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
Yeah.
So we always use worst case scenario when planning. So this is the worst case scenario.
So worst case scenario, we could actually lose those houses by 2050.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Vince. Thanks, Liz. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Vince, for that presentation. one of the things I was hearing about with the funding, and I think that is, you know, I know you wanted to focus on the resiliency piece, but I think it is really a question of how we can get this passed. And I think that one thing is about how we talk about it and sort of the marketing of it. And I don't really feel comfortable using that word marketing, but I think you know, just saying Baxter Road, even if you don't say the word geotubes, is going to be a big trigger for a lot of people. And I think a lot of people in the community think that the town, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, this is not what I think, but like that a lot of time and energy and money is spent on this one road. And so even though we know like the landowners are saying that they will pay for it and everything, we have to like lead with that, you know, instead of like, don't worry, trust us, they're going to pay. I feel like we have to really say it in a way or present it in a way that is, you know, kind of the best case scenario and like, and why this is being done. And that this particular plan has nothing to do with the geotubes. It's really about providing access. And one thing I was thinking about was looking at this is about specifically the lighthouse. You know, I think we focus so much on the homes because obviously that's the obligation, right, is to provide access for homeowners. But I think also everyone in the community benefits by being able to access the lighthouse and that part of our cultural heritage, blah, blah, blah. So I think, I don't know, just my 2 cents in terms of like framing it, what we call it, you know, how it's discussed, I think is really important. And then my question to you specifically is when you're talking about betterments and things, maybe you said this, but how does the construction portion that is part of the lighthouse factor into that? Because I think if at town meeting, I could imagine that coming up as like, okay, well, how much is covered by betterments of landowners and how much is covered like, because like for I know it's not parsed out like this, but for the access piece to the lighthouse and that kind of thing. So thanks.
So you're looking for me to talk more about the access to the lighthouse?
Not the access to the lighthouse as in the construction piece. In terms of the funding, when we're talking about betterments and how it's determined like who has, you know, who's getting that benefit. And so that percentage of that cost, the lighthouse specifically, there's a lot of construction that's going into making sure there's access to lighthouse, which obviously we want. And so I'm curious how much, I mean, not that you've figured out the exact percentage yet, but who would pay for that if that's town land, you know, and I can imagine that coming up in a town meeting question.
The lighthouse and the property it sits on, well, the main part of the parcel, not the entire property where the actual lighthouse stands, oddly, because it was retreated, it's owned by the Sconset Trust. And the Sconset Trust are an active partner in this, and they helped us work out how they want us to get access to their property with a walking trail with switchbacks to try and make it as accessible as possible. So the trust is going to be a beneficiary like any other group. The town doesn't own the property. I think the lighthouse currently stands on a piece of ground owned by the Sankaty Head Golf Club, and they're very keen to keep it, particularly as it's a symbol of their club. So, and I know there's other discussions going on the side of how to continue to preserve that property as well. So they're all actively looking to do the best for it, as are we, to try and maintain access and this iconic part of our island.
Okay, Sarah, thank you for your questions. Thank you, Vince. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, the other question was there was a comment about property taxes earlier. The argument on property taxes either way is it doesn't really swing one way or the other. 20 houses is not that much money. We're not going to get $20 million, $30 million worth of property taxes over that period of time. And we aren't going to lose property taxes. People think, oh, this house disappeared, we lost it. What happens? The levy limit stays the same, and it just gets spread over all the other houses. And when you're losing 2 out of 10,000 houses, it doesn't really impact it. If you lose 20 out of 10,000 houses, it's still not gonna, it's gonna be a rounding error on your taxes. And so the argument that we need to do this because of taxes or we need not to do this because of taxes, both of those are kind of they're not strong it's not a strong argument in my mind. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Matt.
I hate to
I've
grab
got,
I have one more thing to add to that. What we're really doing here is providing the legal requirement for legal access water and sewer. But after that, we're also avoiding what would be 22 or more legal cases or a joint case of some description. And that would be far more expensive.
thanks, Vince. I got three things. I was going to say what Matt said about the taxes, because I remember numerous times proponents of the SPPF's installation at CONCOM meetings getting up and saying what Hillary had said. And at several meetings, the tax assessor came and basically said what Matt said so that we all understood. She was requested to be there so that it was explained. Vince, given no 200 or 100-year storms, how long is this? If this is a go, how long is this thing good for? In other words, how long are we going to have that access? I guess looking at the map, we have till 2100. Is that correct?
Massive question. Let's go with how this map works and assume no coastal protections, because that's, we have another project in the area, but it's not anywhere close to finishing its appeals. So who's to say if that'll ever happen? Let's assume no bank protections like this map does. Most of the houses that would be lost are in the kind of yellow belt for 2030, the ones that are on the ocean side of the road, and the ones that are on the the 2050 belt here. You can kind of see the house colors and their driveways shading. And then there's a couple that are just beyond that. So this answers the risk, but only kind of out to 2050 for most of the properties. There's only one or two properties down here where my cursor is now that are, I think, 108 Baxter Road, that get their egress out onto Baxter Road, that might last longer. But when you're down to one or two houses like that, most are in the much shorter time frame under this worst case scenario for high sea level rise. Yeah, and assuming that the current geotubes wouldn't be in place.
All right, thanks. And then I'm just wondering, how much are we going to be able to tie this? I mean, I guess I'm in Sarah's question of marketing. It's crucial that we tie it to coastal resilience, but I guess the thing that's going to convince people is we need access to the lighthouse because it's our history and we need to be able to get there. Not everybody cares about 22 houses on Baxter Road. These are voters who most likely don't live there. There's not a lot of people that live along Baxter Road in the wintertime. Those are seasonal people, and I'm not trying to denigrate them at all. I'm just saying that the voting base is not there. It's back in town. It's Mid-Island, the year-round population. So, it would be important to really go on the history of it. I know that there are people that say that there are houses that are historic along Baxter Road, and that's true because they were built before 1978, but the most historic house along there is pretty much William Flagg's house, which was built a lot longer ago, and I know there's others that Ian could tell us about, but I agree with Gary. This is a test case for the rest of the island, not only monetarily, but what the town is doing to help us out and help us employ resilience to protect the island. And I'm sure there's people that say, well, what do we care about that end of the island except for the lighthouse or for Sconset? But then when it comes to their part of the island, all of a sudden they care. So you have to, you really have to handle it delicately and strategically so that it all comes out. We have to do this, and this is why. And yes, the lighthouse. And
so absolutely, if you don't mind me, there's a couple of unusual aspects to this. Yes, people have their set opinions about how this area should be handled. And I know there's certain controversies attached to the word Baxter Road, as Sarah correctly identified. No question there. I'd be the first to talk about that. But you also have to remember, and I hate to talk about it because this doesn't play into the PR part. What this is property rights. Gary could probably help me out here. I think it's is it parts 2, 5, 13 and 14 of the Constitution all talk about property rights. And it doesn't matter if you're a year-round resident, you still have your property rights. So that if anything were to go wrong, you have the right to protect your house. You have the right to do what's best for you and your property. It doesn't matter if they're not here year-round, but this could still affect people who are here year-round in other parts of the island. And if they don't get it, if the town doesn't vote for it for this part of the island, who's to say that they won't get it for their part? It's a certain part of self-interest to make sure that every part of the island gets it.
Okay, and one more thing before I let Gary talk. So you keep saying betterment. Have we turned the CRD into a dirty word? I mean, this is obviously a place that a coastal resilience district should be the thing. So we're calling it a betterment, but I just wanted an explanation. That's all.
Yeah, so we're still working out the fine points of CRDs. That's why I haven't mentioned it yet today. It would be nice if we could apply CRDs to this area, but we're still working on it. If this could end up being the first test case for CRDs, I would be thrilled. And it's kind of my hope, but because we're not there yet, I can't call it that.
Okay, very good. Go ahead, Gary.
Just a quick question. Vince, on this chart, when you look at the yellow stripe, that's pretty close. Are we still talking worst case or possible medium case? I mean, that's really close. It's mid-year, past mid-year 25, and we're talking about 2030. So what is that, worst case or likely?
This is worst case here on screen, but where my cursor, I know this is hard to see, but where the cursor is now, kind of close to the B and the A of Baxter Road.
Yep.
That there is 105 Baxter, and we've been measuring that monthly during the winter and after storms for many years. I think the program started, it was 2017 or 18. Leah has some of the data on this because she measures this with me, but the sheet is actually over on her desk at the moment, not with me. Long story short, this area here, right here by the B and the A of Baxter at 105 Baxter Road, that is 36 feet from the edge of the road to the edge of the bluff. If there's anything that keeps me awake at night, it's that one spot right there where we're within 11 feet of having to close the road. There's a document that was that the DPW director at the time in 2013 developed that said that if the coastal bank gets within 25 feet of the edge of the road, it triggers an engineering review. There has to be 3 engineers, a town engineer, SBPF engineer, and an independent engineer. The 3 of those get together, they discuss it, and if their recommendation is to close the road, we may have to. Now, their recommendation might not be that, we don't know, but that is, again, worst case scenario planning. But there's that engineering review could see this close down in 1 or 2 storms, or 1 storm or 1 small fall, that where the base of the bluff is no longer supported and we get a collapse, and then suddenly the road has to close, and the emergency readiness plan may have to kick off before either of the other potential projects.
Sounds pretty close to me. Thank you, Vince.
Yeah.
All right. Don't see any other hands. I want to see, is there any public comment on this right now? Okay, no public comment. Thanks, Vince. Awesome presentation. And thanks for everybody chiming in and having something to say, and just making sure your questions got answered. We could easily continue this to the next meeting if that's what we want to do, or maybe Vince will have more to say. But we're going to move on to discussion on reprioritizing CRP recommendations based on the list from last year. And that's you, Leah.
Yeah, I can run it and then you can hop in. So let me just share my screen. I'm not going to put it in presenter mode just so that we can edit if needed. So just to reorient yourself, last year, this is the list of coastal resilience recommendations that CRAC decided to put together for working on, prioritizing those for the next year or so. And so there has been some questions throughout the last couple of meetings about this list and are we going to reprioritize and all of that. So that's what we'll be working on today. I know in the past it's taken a couple of meetings to kind of get this list together. So just keep that in mind. And then some years you have kind of numerated these. And so one would be, the highest priority that needs to happen as soon as the capacity is available. Last year, you decided just to bullet them. So to not, have the highest priority number one, but just to create that list. So I do have, if we need to look at the different recommendations and what their colored priority is. So just to remind you, Navy is priority one, highest priority. The green or the light blue is moderate and the green is low. But again, all of them should happen. And so this first one, the retreat and relocation program, that is already underway. We have gotten 2 bids in, and Vince and I will be going through those and evaluating them. So that this one can come off the list. This one, 1.2 zoning bylaw updates, that's what the internal work group is working on. So that will probably take years. So I'm not sure. You can either just to keep it on the list or not. This one, Surfside wastewater treatment plant, dune restoration, up and coastal resilience grant. What can we get? What if in draft form? I haven't seen them yet, but they're stormwater management. And Matticat Road raising and bridge conversion. Yesterday, I just applied for a rural transportation grant to start that project. And Vince just told me that the sediment budget, this is incorporated into the dredge plan. So we should be getting that sometime maybe in late spring or so. So Peter, I'll hand it off to you how you want to run this.
Well, I mean, it sounds like, has anybody looked at this before the meeting and reorganized our priorities, or are we getting this information from what Leah just said for the first time? And if that's the case, maybe Leah could, what you just ran through for each one, you could write that in that and then get it to us. And then we can come back with our priorities at the next meeting so that we do our homework over the time between now and the next meeting. I mean, unless we want to do it now. And I mean, you said there are some things that could be dropped from the list. So then we would come back with new priorities that don't exist yet, or that we haven't thought of, pulling from the plan. Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's here. I've heard it different times about like progress priorities. So I hesitate to drop a priority because it sounds like things that are making forward progress are still not like done, right? Like, so, to Leah's point about applying for a grant, it's moving forward and things will get to a certain like design status or assessment. We know with a lot of these projects, they're very like time consuming in duration because there's a lot of planning and understanding that has to happen before something on the ground has to happen, for example. So I'd hesitate to drop something. But I really like what we did before about not numbering them because I think just to remind everybody, one of the reasons we did that was because even though these are all priorities, we didn't want to say like number one has to happen before two, et cetera, because sometimes certain grant opportunities come up that are very particular to a certain project. Like if there's a culvert replacement grant, you can't put it to like planting dune grass, right? So like and we can be responsive. So I don't have a change to the list right now, but I think that this list as it stands is still pretty good. And I'm interested to look back myself at, what's in the CRP that maybe needs to be added. And I don't know if Leah, if you in particular would have recommendations for things that maybe are like, we can add new priorities because these are in progress and aren't taking time right now. You know, like if for example, if you applied for a grant and we're just kind of waiting on it, it means that it's not taking your time right now, but it's still in the list. Does that make sense? Like how many things do we want on this list, I guess?
Yes, I agree. Go ahead, Leah.
I was just gonna say, so I mean, it's up to you. The list doesn't mean that every single one is gonna happen this year. But as far as dropping them, I would suggest dropping the ones that are already, we're already high, like they're already in scope, right? So the money's already there to get them completed. For example, the sediment budget, for example, the retreat and relocation program. If it's something that I applied a grant for, I would not drop that because we don't know if we're getting that grant or not.
Does that answer your question, Sarah? Okay. Go ahead, Hillary.
Thanks. I just first want to say, Leah, I'm continually in awe of how you manage all this and the incredible breadth of complicated and important projects. It really makes my head spin, so I'm just in awe about that. I'm new to this group, so I struggle a little bit with how to advise in a scientific way, without it just being, all the biases that we all carry around all the time, like recency bias and, inertia bias and all of those things. So, to that point, Leah, do you have a rubric that helps you rank these? What's the methodology in terms of assessing and prioritizing these?
Yeah, so I would suggest going back through the coastal resilience plan, and if you go to page 250, you'll find this whole table that's broken down the 40 recommendations by area. And so the navy blue, those are the highest priority because they are either the highest at risk for flooding, erosion, what critical infrastructure, like sooner than later. And so the risk assessment really, and I would also suggest rereading the risk assessment, because that did a whole assessment about all of these recommendations and how to prioritize them. Obviously, risks change. And so, for example, like 5 years ago, 3 years, no, hypothetically, 5 years ago, the sewer treatment facility, like that may have been lower on the list. But then with all those storms a couple years ago, it lost a lot of coastal bank in front of those beds and we're going to shut some down. So like that brings it higher to the list that we need to start doing something there to adapt to that.
Right. So that's what I'm getting at, is that this plan obviously can't, we reorder things because we're responsive to availability of funding, public sentiment, relative changes in the exposure. Do you ever talk to, have you ever reviewed with Mike Burns, our traffic planner, because there's a corollary with how complicated and long range and expensive the projects are. And do you ever talk with him about how he ranks and prioritizes the traffic projects?
I haven't talked to him particularly how he ranks the traffic projects, but when I had mentioned that I just submitted a grant on Monday, that was in partnership with Mike.
Oh, great. Well, I would just ask if it might be worthwhile to look at the long-range transportation plan. I'm not recommending it because honestly, I actually, full disclosure, don't think we do a great job of it. And we have a lot of really high priority projects, which we never make any progress on and seem to do other lower priority things. But there is a methodology that might be useful.
Okay, I just want to reiterate that we have our own methodology for the coastal resilience plan, and that's within the plan. So a lot of these transportation, like roadside ones, are also in the long range plan, and NPEDC have also accepted those as well. So they're in Mass DOT as well.
Right. So the way, sorry, last comment. So we get on the NPEDC, we get a statement that it's like a graph that has the project, and then it has a ranking that comes out of the rubric, which of course, if we wanted to do this, would be our rubric, not theirs. And then it has a status, which is a letter indicating whether it's funded or not funded, blah, blah, blah. And I find it in a really useful, information-rich way to look at it. And I know I can look at the plan, but the plan is going to be increasingly dated. That's all I was saying, is suggesting that that might be a useful tool for us.
Come in.
Okay, thanks, Hillary. Go ahead, Gary.
Thanks. Could you go back to the last slide, Leah? The one before. Yeah, that's the one. First, with respect to what Hillary just said, I just want Hillary to know, at least certainly from my point of view, when you looked at the coastal resilience plan and try to figure out what are our priorities, to me, it was always very clear. If we don't protect our infrastructure, we have nothing to worry about because we have no island. So there was a lot of focus on that. I think it's in the plan. And to me, protecting our infrastructure is really the most important types of priority we have. With that in mind, when I look at the 2024 prioritization list, I see two important things there that are on there. One is the Steamboat Wharf resilience, and the other is the DPW and land resilience. Now, with respect to Steamboat Wharf resilience, we all know that if we don't change the level of, the pier, no boats will be offloading people or trucks or anybody else. And that is a very important priority for the island. Similarly, the DPW project, which was not approved at the last annual meeting, is very important. The question I have is, we don't really have a significant role to play in either one of those. The Steamship Authority understands they have to raise everything, and and we're waiting on them to do what we do. So it's on our priority list, but it's not as if it's something that we are able to take steps and do ourselves. We're just waiting for them to take care of what they're supposed to take care of. The other one, the DPW thing, question is there something else we should be doing? It didn't pass town meeting. The town is certainly, town administration certainly knows it needs to move the DPW headquarters, but is there something we should be doing? And so my question is, should we keep them on the prioritization list as crack priorities, even though we ourselves are not actually implementing the steps that need to be taken? That's really my question. They're both very important projects.
Did you want to respond at all, Leah?
So there are a couple other ones on here where like the natural resources aren't the champions. For example, like the DPW one, that is the DPW, and then natural resources as co-champion. So I would suggest keeping them still on the list. And although, you know, like CRAC could write letters to the Steamship Authority to urge them to put more funding towards, you know, Nantucket resiliency, the terminal there and everything. So I would suggest keeping them on, but this is your list, so you guys can decide.
And Leah, do we have a deadline for when we come up with our 2025 list?
Nope. Like I had mentioned before, this took a couple meetings last year.
Okay,
Peter.
so Gary,
Peter, it may be that just keeping them on the list, even though we don't have a direct role in addressing these issues, keeping them on the list might be important so that when the public takes a look at what our committee feels are highest priorities, they see these items there. Maybe that's the argument for keeping them on the list, even though we're not in a position to actually effectuate the changes that need to be made. But at least it shows that in terms of CRAC's list of priorities, these should be in everyone's thinking as top priorities for the island of Nantucket.
absolutely.
Can I
We're
just,
not always going to get to have a direct role, but but then we do have a direct role. We have, as a committee, identified these priorities. We've put them there, and we put our confidence and our belief behind them, and said these things matter. So yeah, you're exactly right, Gary.
Okay.
And Leah,
thanks. I can't find my fake hand when I share my screen, but thank you, Gary. You articulated that way better than me. And I will say that when I apply for grants, I think it's a very important component too. If the project that I am, you know, want funding for through that grant is on your list, then I always say X project was within, you know, the high priority of the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee. And I think that adds, you know, some strength to it as well.
Good.
okay. Are there more comments? What do you guys think about us taking between now and the next meeting and coming in with our version of this list? Before I get to Matt, what do you guys think of that? Looking at starting on page 250 and maybe finding other things that belong here, or coming back and saying the list is fine the way it is, or because we're not going to do it today. All right, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I'm fine with the list as is. I think leaving those items on for the reasons that were stated at the end is important, and we can influence them, as Leah said, if by writing a letter and say, please get working on this, and you know, so I'm fine with that. My comment, a question, Leah said something like, yeah, zoning is going to be years. It's going to take years. And I'm wondering, why is that going to take years? What is it that's causing it to be? Isn't there some things that we could do more quickly that, you know, that don't, you know, that will have, you know, have large impacts, you know, if we can get them done sooner? You know, why is it going to take a long time? I just, because we've had this, it's been 2 or 3 years since we've had a coastal resiliency plan. We've known about this, planning department's known about this. You know, why are we years away from any zoning changes or even little tweaks that would help us?
Go ahead, Leah.
Okay, thanks, Peter. So because everything needs to get approved at town meeting for zoning, this year, what we need to get approved is what is mandatory. So if that is not approved at town meeting and we get our FEMA flood maps updated, then, and we don't accept those mandatory updates through town meeting, then homeowners will lose their flood insurance. So our goal this year is to get the mandatory ones passed, and then the following year would be to incorporate those higher standards when Shannon came and gave, I think, a couple presentations about those, that, you know, they incorporate the coastal resiliency and sea level rise and all of that, the different zones, to do that the next year. So she recommends not lumping them all together, because if you do that, then you're not passing the mandatory ones that you need to pass, because people may get hung up about those higher standards. So she recommends doing them separately, in separate years.
All right, thanks, Leah. Go ahead, Doug.
Thanks, Peter. I hope you can hear me. My AirPods are not necessarily cooperating. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. First of all, thanks, Leah, again, for reviewing all this. I guess I would echo a couple of comments that other people have made. I think it would be helpful for me personally if we could see your own notations, Leah, as far as like where you feel certain projects have gotten started. I was familiar with most, but some were new to me today. So that's helpful to know. I also tend to agree, I think where Matt is, that I don't think there's any harm in keeping even projects that have gotten kickstarted on this list for all the reasons we've just discussed. I think it's helpful to remind people that retreat and relocation is a huge priority. I don't think that just because we've gotten it underway and put out bids and all that, that we should take it off the list. I think it belongs on that list for all the reasons that others have said. And I guess I would echo also what Leah said back to Matt with regard to why we should expect the planning updates or the zoning bylaw updates to take years. I would only say, number one, yes, we're taking baby steps. We've had one working group meeting so far, and now we know that later this month we'll have a second where Megan Trudell will be providing an update on what progress she's made on those mandatory updates. I would look at, if there's an analogy to updating the planning or the zoning bylaw updates, I would look at what happened with the wetland bylaw updates that Concom went through. Took them multiple years to get done because they touch every individual homeowner. Every voter, every taxpayer has opinions on it. And I don't think there's going to be, it's going to be likely that we would see any rapid wholesale changes. If there are low-hanging fruit in that process that we can identify, particularly with Hillary's help, I think we would be wise to jump on those. But I guess I was just ready to manage expectations and say, I don't think we're going to see any kind of wholesale changes to zoning bylaws next week. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Doug. Go ahead, Jen.
Thanks, Pete, and apologies if I go in and out. My internet connection is really bad today. I just wanted to say I agreed with what you said, Pete. I think we should kind of take until the next meeting. I need to go through and re-review what's in there to see if, there are any priorities that should move on to the list. But I'd also like to know, because Leah's so deep into this, if she has any suggestions of things that you think need to be moved onto this list or that we should consider on here as well.
Leah?
Well, it seems like we're not going to finish this today. So what I'll do is make my comments on this 2024 prioritization list, and then add, if I think anything's necessary, add that on.
Okay. Do we need a vote to say that we're going to do this for the next meeting, or can we just do it?
You're the chair, so you set the agenda, so you can move it to the next meeting.
Okay, so I'll take a motion to move this CRACS 2024 prioritization list to our October 14th meeting. Who wants to make a motion?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Okay, Gary made the motion. Doug seconded. All those in favor, and I can't see everybody, so Jen Carberg.
Aye.
Matt Fee.
Aye.
Joanna Roach.
Aye.
Hillary Hedges Rayport.
Aye.
Christy Kickham.
Aye.
Liz Phelps.
Aye.
Doug Rose.
Aye.
Sarah Boyce.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Okay. Is there any public comment on what we just discussed? Now we have 3 members of the public. Okay, seeing none, moving on. Item number 7, continued discussion on generating ideas for coastal resilience outreach, including potential videos. A bulleted item, film pitch and examples of animation. Okay. Who wants to start? Who has comments?
Do you want me to share what Sarah put together?
Sure.
Maybe she can run through it. Okay.
So, thanks, Leah. Yeah, so this is really brief, and it just what I tried to do was take I listened to the meeting again from last time and kind of tried to pull together the comments and tried to be a little more cohesive. We had lots of different ideas, but as we said, for those of you who are at the meeting, that to move forward with any kind of video project, we needed to at least have something to show, like potential not clients, people that we were going to work with, to say, this is what we want. There's lots of different directions, of course, that we could go, but I think the general consensus from last meeting was that for the first video, or for the first thing that we're kind of putting out, that we'd like it to be a little bit more general, because we want to lay the groundwork for understanding that CRAC is doing a lot of things. Like we just talked about that priority list, and Leah talked about progress that's been made on a lot of those priorities. And to Doug's point, some of those felt new, or we didn't know that. And, you know, it's all different stages of progress. And so that's like kind of what the goal was with video. So I put this together. Tim, who couldn't be here today, looked at it and commented. And so I just, you know, once again, I think it's easier to start with something and edit it and add to it. And I think the last meeting was good for kind of brainstorming different ideas. And I just want to preface, this is by no means meant to take away from any potential video where we're targeting a certain project or something. It's more like to be a general thing that has longevity. And so, yeah, I guess that's it. And I guess the last piece is I didn't, you know, deem to decide to be the one to decide like how long anything should be, because it really depends on who our contractors are and what they say for the costs. Because once again, this is really, just to remind everyone, it's targeted to a specific pot of money that's available, and we can't go over it, because that would, or we would prefer not to go over $10,000, because then we'd have to do procurement and it would delay the project that much more. And we have a little bit more creative, maybe not creative freedom, but choice if we stay within that budget. And Leah can correct me if I'm wrong with that.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Is there more down below, additional messaging thoughts, Sarah? Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have, that's Leah's screen. So yeah, there's, it goes down to, we had like what the rough budget was. I don't know what the timeline is. And then the last thing we had was that potential distribution locations. And I think with that potential distribution locations, there can be different lengths for different things, right? So like we know that the Dreamlanders are about 90 seconds at the most. I don't know anything about the Highline Steamship ones. TikToks are like, I don't know, 3 seconds. I don't have TikTok. But and then Instagram videos are short, but not TikTok short. So I think it depends what we have. I honestly personally think that we should, if we have something like this, and that's once we're agreed on, we can talk to the different videographers, and then they can make a recommendation based on our budget, what we could do. I know that videos that we've worked with before, they take a huge amount of content, you know, like take a lot of video, and then there's maybe one 30-second video. There's then, you know, can be whittled down. So it's like the same content, but have a few different lengths.
Excellent, Sarah. Thanks for condensing it and putting it all into our minds, and it's we almost
I
don't
hope
have
it reflects what people said. That was kind of like I was trying to go back to get what general thoughts. But once again, this is very general, and once we actually work with someone, I think it can be tailored and you know, it can evolve a little bit too.
In just looking at this, you guys, do you want to add to it or edit it in any way? Do you see things that weren't included, or because I would think I would be asking Leah, what is our next step after this? Joanna?
Thanks. I know that the only thing that I would want to add to this is like a purpose, right? Like I think that we've missed a bullet point, and that would just be purpose, which could be the same thing as description, but I think that or goals and objectives, but I'm not like when I think about the purpose of this, I think about how do you want to make people feel, right? And so I think that when if I was going to be the person who was bidding on developing this video, the most important thing that I would ask is, how do you want to make the viewer feel? What do you want to make the viewer feel? What do you want to make them walk away with?
Okay.
So I get that there's a lot, this is great, but like if we could zone in on, do you want them to feel like there is a sense of urgency? Do you want them to feel like they are connected to this problem, right? Do you want to make them feel like they need more education? Do you want to call them to some type of action? I think that's the thing that we haven't really quite identified. And
Okay.
Hillary sent a great list of example videos. And so like I'll give you I think I can maybe give a good example of this, which is if you look at the one which is the climate scientist letter to her kids, right? Which I thought was really good. It's not directly correlatable to what we're trying to do, but it made you feel something, right?
Okay. Yes.
Right. The other one like the other one on here was the place, right? The DeMarco swimming hole. Very short video. It showed the swimming hole when people were having a great time and enjoying it, and then it showed it all dried up, right? So you immediately felt something, right? Oh, this is a crisis.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, Joanna. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I think how Joanna just sort of how she asked the question really, you know, kind of is the perfect way to ask it, a perfect way to be thinking about it. And I kind of think we want to say, hey, you're hearing all this scary stuff about climate change, et cetera, we want to say, hey, we got this. This is what we're doing on Washington Street. Here's what it's going to look like. Here's the potential, you know, please support it. I think it has to be something like that quick, you know, yeah, it's scary, but here we go. We got this, and here's the things we're doing. Please support it. Please get involved. Please support it, or whatever we want to say. But I think she just kind of put it for us, a good way for us to think about it. How do we want people to feel?
And that right there, Matt, is that's purpose right there. We want to reach their emotions, but then we want to tell them, okay, yeah, it is scary, but here we got this, we're working on it, and we need that support. So that's purpose right there, I think. Go ahead, Christy.
Two things, just to make a comment on that, on Matt's comment there. We do got this, but it also needs to portray that we got this with your help. It's not just the town government. So I just think that's an important thing to make sure you add to that. But my comment was revisiting something that Gary brought up that he may have thought was ludicrous, but I've always thought about it. which is as we are introducing ourselves in this way to the committee, is renaming it the crack, because he's right. We all think about a few things. I just didn't know what the consensus might be to renaming it. I do have a suggestion that would slightly change it, but have it make a lot more sense than crack. But I don't know if that's laid in stone, but I do think it sounds crazy, but I think it has merit.
All right, thanks, Christy. Go ahead, Leah.
If you do want to think about changing the name, it would have to go through the select board. And they would have to accept the change or not.
Okay, all right, well, let me find out about that. I just think this is a big step, and you either set it in stone now or you make the change now and push on. I think an alternative could be like CRAB, like Coastal Resiliency Advisory Board. It makes sense. It's not as, I don't know. I just think there's a few better options than crack. So that's all.
Thank you, Christy. Hillary?
Yeah, you bet.
Christy, thanks for bringing that up, because I thought about it and then I remember the long conversation we had either last meeting or a couple meetings ago, and everybody, and Gary said, why don't we change our name? I just don't understand. I don't understand why we would want to be known as crack with a crap plan. I mean, I've been involved with organizations that have become known as acronyms, and it's just not appealing to people. So I understand. I don't think going to the select board is a big deal at all. The hard thing is deciding what we want to be known for. And I know nobody wants to take the time to work on that because everybody, we have so much other more important stuff to do. But if we feel like it's important to be an identity that people know and think about and talk about, we should have a name that people can not snicker about.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say about that.
I don't know. I don't necessarily agree with changing the name. I don't think it's going to convince people to support us. I think we have to get people to support us based on our actions. And the name is trivial. I mean, it is what it is. Go ahead, Vince.
Thank you, Peter. It gets back to lessons learned and branding from what Sarah was talking about earlier. It's been the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee, CRAC, since the committee got founded, I think, in 2019. So to change it at this point is to change your branding and not be recognized anymore. Plus, the select board chose the name. I think Matt gave some discussion at a previous meeting where there were 2 or 3 or whatever number of suggestions on the table, and that was the one that the select board chose. They chose the name and the public chose to turn it into a word. These things happen, but it's what you're known as. And if you change now, you're no one will recognize you, or they'll say, who's this group again? If you want to make a suggestion to the select board, you can. You're advisory, you give advice to the select board, but there's nothing that says the select board have to take it.
Leah?
Thanks, Peter. We're just diverging off the agenda. So if
Right.
you want this as an agenda item, then that can be for a future meeting. But I think that we should figure out this film pitch so that once it's figured out, then I can kind of shop it around to the different filming production companies.
I agree. We're getting away from it, but yes, we can have it as agenda item for the October 14th meeting if that's what we all want. Okay, Liz, go ahead. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to agree about the messaging that we should have a hopeful message, but also, a call to action that this is something that we need to be really thinking about. I liked in the examples that were sent, I liked the the one that was Environment and Climate Change Canada. I just thought that it was like a positive message, but it was in a child's narration, so it kind of brought to your mind that, you know, this is really going to be an issue for our kids, and you know that really can spur some motivation for people to be on board about these things. And obviously, I know we all know that, but it's just a way to you know, I don't know if having a child narrate it is the right way to do it, but I thought that they did a really good job with their video and doing that, and that the animation was just like really kind of cheerful, you know, while at the same time talking about an issue that, you know, can be a little overwhelming. So having that positivity mixed in, I thought was, you know, was a good way to do it. And then also just like for the outlets that we were considering, I know that we're talking about doing videos, which is great, but I don't know if there's, you know, if it's feasible financially or otherwise to possibly do a segment also for radio. Like if we could record a portion for the radio, because I know that that's really, you know, that is that gets the message out there really well with, you know, 97.7 and the other stations that people listen to a lot out here.
Yeah, it's a good idea about the radio. And I like the idea of a child narrating. But in terms of having this be animated, I would prefer animation be directed at children and have it be real actual video of parts of the island or whatever we have to consider, so that people see us and not cartoon characters versions of us, and they see the places that we're proposing projects for, where projects are happening, places that are in peril, places that are vulnerable, aren't depicted in animation, but are actual video of those places and during storms, so people get it right off. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. Thanks, Joanna. I really like your suggestion of with the purpose, because I was feeling like a call to action was hard because we didn't have like a vote for this or whatever. But I think that the way you guys have all spoken about the call to action being like, we need your help. And it can be even as generalized as like, in the future, we're going to, I mean, not verbatim what I'm saying, but something along the lines of, we're going to need your, you know, be creative as a community in how we address these various issues. And I can see like something along those lines, like different images coming up, right? Because the reality is we're going to need votes, we're going to need, but sometimes we're going to need land, we're going to need money, we're going to need financing, we're not, you know, like we're going to need lots of different things for depending on the project. Sometimes we're going to need like volunteers to help with certain things. So I think it's kind of nice to have that call to action. The other thing I forgot to put in here that I had thought about, but I forgot to put in before I sent it out was whatever the budget ends up being, I think it's important that we think about translation services. So both Spanish and Portuguese. And so that could dictate what we're able to put in the video if we're going to also, you know, have narration in multiple languages. But I think it's really important, obviously, for the community. And so that might dictate, like, I know animation can be very powerful, but also it could be, we have to pay for that service, whereas videoing like the properties around the community and might be a little more accessible. So I just trying to think about how far that $10,000 or so can go.
Okay.
I know Leah had put in the translation piece when we had that previous grant request for the video. I'm sorry if I'm forgetting, if I'm mixing up different grant applications, but I know there was at some point some discussion about that.
Okay.
What
Did you want to say?
what age group do you want to focus on?
Can I respond?
Yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
I think it's really important that we focus on adults. I mean, that's what I thought this whole project was, like our voting public. Not that like other age groups won't get anything out of it, but I feel pretty strongly that this is meant for the voting community.
Okay. Are we going to try and tune this up now, or do you feel confident, Sarah, that you can bring us back another version, and then maybe between now and then, now in the next meeting, we will, we might each write what we think the purpose is, and then we can sort of edit on screen with what we come up with. What do you guys think about that? What do you think about that, Sarah?
I feel good. Once again, I don't want to say that this is my project. I just, I volunteered to summarize what everyone put together. So the more time people have to input it, I would prefer that than me making unilateral decisions, because
Okay.
it's not my project. I'm supportive of it. I'm just meaning, like, I don't want to be I cannot be the one to move this forward because I don't have the capacity, but.
Okay, well, you got us going then. So why don't we take between now and the next meeting and come up with what we think the purpose is? And we'll edit on screen and put it together at the next meeting, and then take the next step. Does that sound good?
Peter, can I suggest that people email me what they think the purpose should be, and then I can
Sure.
compile them and put them in
Yeah.
the packet so that people can read them ahead of time?
Yep.
And then
If
from
you-
there, we can edit it on screen.
Yeah, if you just send a
I'll
reminder.
send, yep, and I'll send this to everyone as well
Yeah.
as the prioritization. And I'll do that sooner than later so that you have weeks to look at it.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead, Gary.
Well, as we were saying before, and I think the purpose is very important, and I would just probably add the words, as Matt said, we really need their support. We need their help and support, mostly their support, because as we go down the road, we're going to have to go back to town meeting for the funding to make decisions. And basically, we want to keep letting the public know that we're moving forward, and they will eventually be asked to help support the steps we need to solve the issues.
Yeah,
So,
great.
yeah.
Thanks, Gary. Go ahead, Joanna.
I just have a question, and this might be for Leah. Do you have a list of vendors that you're gonna send this to? Do you know who you're gonna ask to bid on this?
No, so if you have suggestions, email them over, please.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks, Chip. Okay, is there anybody else? Are there any members of the public that want to contribute to this conversation? Nope. Okay, you'll get an email from Leah with what Sarah prepared, and then reminding you to come up with what you believe the purpose is so that we can get this done at the next meeting. Okay. New business committees, Natural Resources Department reports from Planning Board, Concom, Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board, Select Board, Advisory Committee of Non-Voting Taxpayers, and other committee members. I'm to remind you that September is Climate Change Awareness Month. And so see the packet for the final proclamation to the Select Board. And also to remind you that the Climate Change Summit is on Wednesday, September 10th at the Great Harbor Yacht Club, starting at 4:30 and running till 7 p.m. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Leah, but you have to register to go. It doesn't cost anything, but I think you have to register. Is that right?
Yes, but Jen or Sarah, do you guys want to add anything into that?
Sure, I'll add just really quick. Our registration is full and our wait list is full at this point. We are more than over capacity. So just if you want to come and you haven't registered, you're welcome to come, but you might have to stand in the back. Especially because the weather doesn't look good for any outside activities for tomorrow. But
Okay.
we hope to see everybody there.
Gary, do you have your hand up from the last comment?
No, I
Or is
wanted
it-
to mention that
Okay.
the article that Leah sent around to us, written by her and Vince, someone from Arcadis, was just spectacular. And sent it along, and it's going to go to all members of the non-voting taxpayers who are interested in these issues. So it was a great job, Leah, you and Vince did. So thank you so much for that terrific article on adaptation and retreat. Terrific.
Thank you, Gary.
Okay, well, all right, discussion of upcoming meeting dates.
Oh, sorry,
and
Peter,
topic.
can I add one thing? I just want to give
Okay.
an update about Hurricane Erin and the
Yep.
erosion monitoring. So surprisingly, the South Shore fared very well with those 25 to 30-foot waves. There was one spot out in Tom Nevers that lost 11 feet, and other than that, pretty much everything else stayed stable. So lucky for Nantucket.
Definitely. Okay. No other comments? No public comments? Okay, next meeting is October 14th, 2025 via Zoom. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved. Second.
Okay, moved by Matt, seconded by Doug. Roll call vote, Gary Beller,
Aye.
Sarah Boyce,
Aye.
Hillary Hedges Rayport,
Aye.
Joanna Roach,
Aye.
Liz Phelps,
Aye.
Christy Kickham,
Aye.
Jen Carberg,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Doug Rose.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you, everybody.